Especially because that trade is going to end up being 3/4 for $1, the same way it was for Mookie Betts. I don't really see any reason why that trade would look any different ultimately.
Can Greg pitch the rest of the season as Chris Sale for the Red Sox? Greg from Succession?
Yes. I think that I would like, if they ever do make a baseball movie about our current times, yes, Nicholas Braun should definitely play Chris Sale.
Right? Like, he's the most Chris Sale looking guy imaginable.
I like it.
And happier news for Red Sox Nation. They can live the rest of hopefully for them, they're like, oh, Yankees troubles? Like, what's going on here? We might be dying. This season might be a lost cause for us. But the Yankees have been rough the last few weeks. John, what is going on with the Yankees?
Part of it is just they only have 3 or 4 regulars really hitting right now. They have Aaron Judge, who's the best hitter on the planet at the moment. DJ LeMahieu's been great, and Anthony Rizzo's been productive, and Jose Trevino somewhat, but that's really it. And so the bottom half of their lineup has not really produced. Their bench has not really produced. I think they're missing. Bad. Yeah, that's the thing. Like with the Yankees, especially, is they don't have a good bench.
Mm-hmm. Carpenter's now gone for a long time.
Losing Matt Carpenter really, really hurts. They really, obviously, his left-handed bat and all the power he provided, and his versatility in terms of he could play first, he could still maybe play a little third, he can DH. I don't know if they managed to get him in the outfield at all, but either way, there was some versatility there that he was offering that is no longer there. And obviously, coupled with Aaron Hicks and Gleyber Torres and Josh Donaldson, well, I mean, I'd say slumping, but Donaldson's been in a season-long slump. I mean, I think they'll be okay ultimately. They have some issues that they're struggling with in terms of slumps right now. They've really struggled in high leverage situations since the All-Star break. Part of that, I think, is Clay Holmes struggling in the 9th inning. He's had some really bad blowups or meltdowns in the last week or so. But it really is just they have a lineup that's really only a third of it is hitting right now. And some of that I think should improve. I think Gleyber Torres should probably hit better. They will probably get better. Like they will get Giancarlo Stanton back at some point, and that will help matters as well. But I don't also at the same time expect any real reason to think that Isaiah Kiner-Falefa or Aaron Hicks or Josh Donaldson are really going to give you anything more than they've given you at this point. That's 2 old guys in Hicks and Donaldson where injuries have really, really just, I think, sapped what's left in their bodies and bats, and a guy in Kiner-Falefa who just has never hit first place, and has also not looked particularly good as a shortstop defensively. So I would be curious to see ultimately if the Yankees pull a Braves, as they did with Michael Harris and Vaughn Grissom, and decide that maybe now is the time for Anthony Volpe or for Oswald Peraza. Like, if they do want that little shot in the arm, if they think, maybe they are better off with Falefa on the bench for the time being. Or
Dominguez might get a call up too. Who knows?
But yeah, I mean, they're just struggling right now, just in terms of getting reliable, consistent at bats from guys who are not named Aaron Judge and DJ LeMahieu and Anthony Rizzo. So some of that should turn around, I think. But I think if you're a Yankees fan, they're still going to win the division. I don't think there's any real chance that they blow that unless Toronto goes absolutely buck wild over the last 6 weeks of the season. But I mean, if you're the Yankees, how good do you feel about your offense in the postseason now? Or how good do you feel about the bullpen that has really kind of up and down a fair amount? How good do you feel about the non-Garrett Cole parts of the rotation? I don't think Frankie Montas, he had a tough start in his first start as a Yankee. I don't think that's what we should expect necessarily, unless something about his shoulder is still bothering him, which that's has to be a wait-and-see kind of thing. But, Jameson Taillon has been really up and down. Dominguez is not a consistent pitcher. Nestor Cortez really seems at this point, I love Cortez. I love what he's done. He really starts to feel more like a 5-and-fly guy at this point. And Granted, in the postseason, means he's really only going to see the lineup twice, maybe start a third time. But yeah, there are, I think, some real legitimate depth issues with the Yankees that.
The Jordan Montgomery trade, I think we can almost say now was a mistake. That was one that felt like a mistake at the time.
I could understand the logic of it in that if you think that Montgomery is not a guy who's going to make your playoff rotation, if you've decided that your playoff rotation, once they got Montas, is Cole, Montas, Cortez, and Taillon,
Mm-hmm.
And you think that,
Or
you want to
Severino if
start
he's healthy.
or Severino if he's healthy. I mean, and that's another big one that they're waiting to come back to see how Luis Severino is going to pitch. Then really for Montgomery, you're looking at a bullpen role at best. And as a ground ball oriented lefty who doesn't throw particularly hard, there's not really, you can't really play matchups with him. There's not really, you're not going to turn to a starter to do bulk innings in the postseason. Like, he doesn't really have a role on a playoff roster. And the difference between him and Herman, for example, over the course of the rest of the season probably amounts to nothing in terms of projected production. Meanwhile, Harrison Bader is a fantastic defensive center fielder, and Hicks out of the lineup on a regular basis, and allow the Yankees to play Aaron Judge and right on a regular basis instead of having to make him play center every now and again. Offensively, I don't know that he adds all that much aside from some cheap power and some speed, but I think what he offers defensively and the ability to firm up the Yankees defense in the outfield for the postseason, and what he offers on the base pass too, I think that's worth the minor downgrade from Montgomery to Herman. But I mean, yeah, it was a risky deal for sure. There's a chance that does not work out as planned, particularly that Bader's been dealing with in plantar fasciitis is not something that just goes away easily or quickly necessarily. It already has had complications for him. He's already out longer than the Cardinals had originally expected him to be. So it definitely is a gamble. But I think that's the thing. I don't think the Yankees necessarily had to do more at the deadline. It just does seem though like this is also I think kind of the bet they made in off season that instead of going like a Carlos Correa or a Seager, that they were going to take the diminished offense at short from a guy like Kiner Falefa and or diminished offense from Donaldson at third base in exchange for the better defense those guys provide. I think Bader is something similar, where the focus is really on run prevention. That between Judge and Stanton and Rizzo and LeMahieu and whoever else gets hot at the moment, they can hack their way enough through postseason games against postseason pitching, but that really the better defense is the one that will make a bigger difference overall in keeping runs off the board in a way that they really couldn't last season. So I can understand that trade. I think it's still risky, obviously, but it does, when you look at it that way, I think make a fair amount of sense.
Should be interesting. I also think, Brantley on the shelf for a while, and it doesn't seem good what's going on in Houston there. And they have some outfield issues. They're not perfect. Like the AL is not like where the Yankees are in serious trouble. Like everybody who's contending in the AL, I think, has their flaws right now.
I think that's fair. It's your, I think it's personal choice at this point if you like the Astros or the Yankees more in terms of which is the better team in the American League. But I don't think the gap between them, if there is a gap, is at all sizable. Like, I think they're two equally matched teams where if that is the pennant series we get, like, I think either of those would be deserving and valid AL winners. And I do think that between the two of them, they have a claim to one of them being the best team in the American League. Which, granted, the only other real options are Minnesota and Toronto and maybe Cleveland, or I guess by virtue of Cleveland being tied with the Twins or ahead. I can't remember actually if they're tied or ahead of the Twins down the Central, but I guess that's the other thing. The gap, there's no real gap between the Yankees and the Astros. There is a gap between the Yankees and the Astros and the rest of the American League. And I think that's part of the calculus, too, for the Yankees, is that we're guaranteed a playoff spot at this point. We, on paper, are one of the better, if not the best, team in the American League. We upgraded the rotation at the deadline. We added Andrew Benintendi, someone I actually haven't mentioned yet, who struggled so far as a Yankee, but certainly has shown better than that, or played better than that in Kansas City. They made the changes that they felt they needed to make, and they put themselves in position to, I think, at the very least, get to the ALCS and figure it out from there. And I think that's really when it comes to building a playoff team, that's about the best you can ask for.
I think so. I just, like, Yankee fans are really going through it. It's like, it's not that serious. I think part of it is just that, like,
poor babies. Now they're only on pace to win 98 games.
Yeah, but I also think you know what it is? I think it's because the Mets are competent and the Mets are good and the Mets.
Well, the Mets are the best team in New York right now.
I think that's all it is. I think that's why they're freaking out. It's not that bad. The sky's not falling. It's just you're reminded that the other team is actually just really streaking. And look, I hate it. Like, friend of the pod, David Roth, the defector, Mets guy. Well, like we were talking in DMs, and I was like, hey, this competence is something that I don't particularly like. And also, he was like, well, they've got like 18 months of competence in them. Like they're an 18-month at a time competence. So this is not sustainable, unlikely. And I was like, yes, but at the same time, some people are saying, is it time for a raid of the Cohens? Some people are saying that's where we're at. I am not saying that, but maybe that is where we need to go. Maybe that is the time.
Are you saying that Steve Cohen has boxes of top secret, highly classified material that the FBI from him?
Yes.
Okay.
Look, I'm not saying it. I'm just saying other people have been saying it, and it's worthy of at least checking into at the very least, because the Mets have to be stopped.
It's a good point, though, that the Mets being the team that they are right now is definitely increasing, I think, some of the agitation on Yankees fans' part of part of it too is like we were beats in the first half. We're on pace to 110 games. The team never looked better in our lifetimes, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh no, we stink. And also the Mets are very good, and also the Blue Jays are pretty good right now too. But if the a mediocre second half, that's why that was the beauty of that first half. You gave yourself so much cushion in case exactly this stuff happened. Imagine how much worse it would all be if this leads down to 3 games as opposed to 10 or whatever happens at the moment. That is that sheer benefit of having had that hot seat. Were the Yankees as good as the team, or are the Yankees as good? There has to be some level of regression there. But ultimately, that doesn't matter to a certain degree because those wins have already been banked. That's there. That's the real bad streak. It's not necessarily season, but things go wrong. For the Frankie Montas doesn't get out of the gate. That's fine. Like we have some time to figure stuff out or whatever. If Andrew Benintendi doesn't hit 100 right away, okay, so what? We still got some space to move. Look, check back in if 2 weeks later that lead is down to 5 games or something. We're really going to be having some fun. But if I'm a Yankees fan, I'm annoyed, but I don't necessarily know. Beyond, of course, the usual worry of any team in terms of, like, are we good enough to win a World Series? But I think ultimately that's the thing. The Yankees are still good enough to win a World Series. I don't think anything from the last 2 weeks No, unless something like Clay Holmes' struggles are more than just struggles, and it's like there's actually something wrong with him, and he's just not as good go forward. Because a guy like Holmes is just super, super important to what they do. But barring any injuries to guys like Judge, Cole, any other extremely young players, I think the Yankees will be fine, and I think they're still good enough to win the World Series.
Who's not good enough to win the World Series because they've been bad at everything for a while now. The Detroit Tigers, John, who finally relieved their long time 22-year run for Alex Avila in baseball ops. And say it again.
Alex Avila, is he also Alex Avila, like his son?
Oh, is he not? I just assumed it was Alex Avila. Okay, maybe not. Maybe
I thought it was I just don't know if he's also Alex. I don't know if Al is short for Alex or if it's just.
That's what I assumed. Maybe I'm wrong. It just.